Okay, we're live. Let me check the sound. How's it going? Let me know in the. That looks good. The sound looks good. Let me know in the chat though how everything looks, sounds. Lots to talk about tonight. I am back from my recent trip to MIT, where I got to see an interview conducted by a friend of mine who runs the Ekkolapto YouTube channel. An interview of Stephan Wolfram by a friend of mine who runs the Ekkolapto YouTube channel. I linked it below so you can check it out. It's a great channel. Definitely recommend subscribing. It was a great trip, and I got to have a little small presentation of Sentient Singularity Theory. I got to see about a lot of other things that people were working on at this conference, and I got to speak to Stephan Wolfram briefly and learn exactly where we agree and where we don't, because that has been basically the mystery for years now, is how much do Stephan Wolfram and I agree, at least on this channel, because there's a lot of people that are very obvious, and it's very obvious to know what they think about certain things, about metaphysics and about physics. And Wolfram is not one of those people because of the terminology that he uses. But I've been wanting to ask him certain questions for years, and I got the chance to ask him those questions. So it was great. Please hit the like button, by the way. It really helps fuel the algorithm. And I will get started here. It's also kind of an Ask Me Anything, so if you have any questions, just comment them in the live chat or in the comments down below. But here's a little video of my little presentation, my humble presentation at, there was a table, don't mind my food. But I had links to the YouTube channel, links to the website, and very, very, I guess, basic school project style posters. And I got to have an animation running of Sentient Singularity Theory the whole time. I actually changed the battery on that computer right before going there. It was so old. That's not the one that I use here, but that if you unplugged it, it instantly died. And so the day before, I ordered a new battery for $35 and changed it. So if you have a laptop that is not working very well, don't pay somebody hundreds of dollars to fix the battery. You can order one on Amazon for like $30 and fix it yourself. But it was great. I've never been to MIT before, and I'm really grateful to my friend who ran the event, Addie, for inviting me. And it was really great to meet a lot of people that I have spoken to on the internet about physics, and seen some of them, which I've seen and not spoken to, but some of them who I've spoken to and have even become, virtual friends of mine. I got to see them in person. If you guys are ever in the comment section, you probably know Memes of Destruction. I also did an interview on his channel, and he interviewed Wolfram as well. But he has a great channel, and I saw him at the event. It was funny. I walked by him and I thought it was him, but I wasn't sure. And then I went back and I looked at him and pointed, and he did a double back as well, looked at me and pointed, and he was like, "Tyler." It was hilarious. But I didn't know he was going to be there. It was great to meet Memes. But I also got to speak with the people at the Qualia Research Institute, and I got to see the interview by my friend Addie of Stephan Wolfram, and then afterwards I got to speak to Stephan Wolfram a little bit about certain and clarify certain questions that I had. But not only that, if you watched the previous stream, last week's live stream, that was on Stephan Wolfram's interview by Brian Keating, which I recommend watching, I showed that Wolfram in that interview said that the Higgs is a kludge. A kludge is like a placeholder. It's not something that's true, but it's something that is, functional, I guess. Let's look it up because that's a better kludge. There's much better definitions than what I've just said. An ill-assorted collection of parts assembled to fulfill a particular purpose. An ill-assorted parts to make something. Yeah, it's basically like it's like a fix, if that makes sense. It's kind of like dark matter. Dark matter is a kludge in physics. There isn't dark matter necessarily. My theory does not require dark matter. It has an alternative explanation, but conventional physics narrative is that there is dark matter, which what that means is that when they measure the mass in the universe, it's not enough to hold the universe together when you do the math. I've never done the equations, never done the math, so I'm just telling you what they think. And so they think that there's all this extra matter that we can't detect as of, at least currently, with our current technology, and they are searching for it constantly. They have not found it because the math seems to require extra matter, extra mass, and that's not a requirement in sentient singularity theory. But that concept of dark matter is a kludge, basically. It's just like if they had detected dark matter, then it wouldn't be dark. And but they've never detected it. They just assume it because of the math, and that's basically what the Higgs is as well. The Higgs is it's a kludge. It's like a way of making the math work that we can observe when it comes to mass and of the mass of particles in the universe. But we'll get more into that. But the thing is about that is that when I first started learning about quantum physics, I started, listening to a bunch of lectures online of everybody from Sean Carroll to Eric Weinstein to Stephan Wolfram and countless other people, Michio Kaku, and other less notable people. I looked at the Standard Model and saw that the Higgs boson did not seem to naturally fit the rest of the symmetries in the Standard Model. And so I always thought that it was kind of like an error to include it, but I couldn't explain why using math. I can show it using symmetry structures, which is how I do this for the most part. But because this is a metaphysics theory, it's just about showing how it's the theory of information, and information is about symmetry relationships. This, therefore, not that. So it's about mirrored structures, and you can model that in 2 dimensions in like Excel. But it was something that has always bugged me in physics, and I've never been able to find anybody except one other person until Stephan Wolfram who seemed to say something like that. That the Higgs didn't seem to work, and that was Eric Weinstein. And linked below is a link to his talk at UCSD a couple months ago, where he said the Higgs is an illusion, and it should be time stamped. And so I went to Stephan Wolfram after his talk, after his interview, and I not only did I ask him the questions that I had, I told him that Eric Weinstein seems to share the same beliefs, and that I also agreed with him that the Higgs was a kludge. And he was like, "It's a total kludge." Those were his words. And in the interview he gave with Brian Keating that I shared my thoughts on last week, he explains an alternative explanation for what we observe when it comes to mass, the mass of particles in the universe, that doesn't include the Higgs field, which is basically like an alternative for the ether. It is just the ether. It's just a new word for the ether, is the Higgs field. It's the same basic concept. It's just like there's a fluid that is causing drag, basically, on particles that are moving, and that causes mass. And it's very, very basic explanation. But he gives an alternative, and I actually think his alternative is much more likely to be correct. Yeah, at least the concept that he shared in that interview. And I told him that, but I told him that Eric Weinstein seemed to agree with him, and that the Higgs is some type of an illusion or kludge. And he thought that he was very surprised that him and Eric agreed on that, but or maybe on anything. But I mean, they've done in a talk together, but once before on Brian Keating's channel, and it was good. You can just sense a competitive energy between the two of them, and I'd much rather see them go on like Brian Keating's podcast or Kurt Chimungel's podcast and talk about their shared thoughts about the Higgs. That would do so much more for advancing physics, but it would flip the tables of physics completely. Like, it would show how much of a disaster the field is. It might even like spark some type of renaissance in science, because everybody assumes that physicists are the ones that know what's going on. So that's why they ask them every question about, everything from AI to aliens to, God and free will and all these questions. And because people assume that physicists understand reality on a very deep level. And that might be true for some physicists. It is, and a lot of them don't even have degrees in physics. And it was definitely true of physicists of the past, but it's very, very rare of physicists today. And I understand that sounds, I don't know, like, what, cocky? But it's just true. And if we could propose an alternative explanation for the observations that people use the kludge that is the Higgs to explain, and then have some type of experiment that showed that alternative proposal was actually correct, that would be revolutionary. But it would show that physics is in shambles, because every physicist in every physics department in this entire world, basically, and I'm sure there's a couple exceptions, but I don't even know them. And so that tells you everything that you need to know. Has never raised their hand and was like, I don't think that's right. There's something up with that. I looked at the Higgs my first week studying the Standard Model and was like, there's something up with that. That doesn't seem to be natural, at least. It's not that the math is wrong. I'm not arguing with the math. I don't know the math. I'm not familiar with the formulas and equations that are used in that, and I don't know exactly what they measured and at CERN in order to confirm the existence of the Higgs. We're going to do some more research on it, and then we'll maybe during the stream. Actually, I looked it up years ago, and it just didn't make sense to me. The Higgs never really has, and then I just kind of abandoned it because I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. And so, but the thing is like, that was considered the greatest scientific discovery in the last 50 years. Is like the confirmation of the Higgs boson. If that's wrong, if that's an error, that is insane. It shows that Eric Weinstein and everybody else, and me, and Wolfram, and many others, it's not just us. It's there. I'm not saying, oh, look at me. I'm saying, like, there's a fair number of people at this point that are realizing, like, the physicists have no idea what's going on. Eric Weinstein says physicists aren't even doing physics anymore. That is a perfect way to put it. It's absolutely correct. They're not even doing physics, and they have no context that would allow them to make predictions about more fundamental structures than what we currently have, with general relativity and the Standard Model. But there's reasons for that, and I talk about that on these streams. They have no context, and Stephan Wolfram has found like a bit of a hack around that, because he doesn't have that much context, or at least he didn't. But his computational outlook has proven very fruitful, I will say, and I see a lot of similarities between some of the things that he says and a lot of the things that I say. But I've always wondered, where do we diverge? And because he says, he has observer theory. Observer theory's main premise is that we observe the laws of physics that we do because we are the types of observers that we are. 100% agree with that. What that really means is that the structure of mind, which is the structure of information ordering, is the structure that will be projected into every observation that we make, basically. And he's right about that. But he uses the term observer, and then he also has this proposal for these atoms of space that he calls them just atoms of space. He doesn't know what they are, but he proposes that they must exist, and that they somehow combine in order to generate or form electrons. And so I have always wondered, are these atoms of space observers themselves? Because that is what sentient singularity theory suggests. An observer is what I call a sentient singularity. It's a someone. It's a being, not a thing, a being. And that our interactions with each other in the context of this nested, interactive network, hierarchical network of sentient beings or sentient singularities produce the observations that we do, even including the primary and secondary colors and the perception of how we perceive our limbs and how we perceive food, and everything that you perceive is filtered through this and is within this context. And so sentient singularity theory would suggest that these atoms of space are observers, or are sentient singularities, are sentient beings. You would be one of these, so my interaction with you causes the space to be constructed and the perceptions that we perceive to arise, essentially. This is all something that Stephan Wolfram seems to agree with. And I'm not the first, he's not the first to say this. I mean, Leibniz said this. But when I asked him, are these atoms of space, could they be observers? He said no, which I was surprised, because that's I think the right answer is that they are. And I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. And the thing is that he doesn't have actually an alternative to this. He just says that, no, they're not observers. And then he told me, he said, that was Leibniz's error, and I'm not making the same error. That's what he told me. And so me and Leibniz either erroring together or winning together. But Wolfram is not in agreement with this idea. He thinks that there is another structure. And I was like, why? And he was like, because it's conscious beings are emergent from unconscious matter, basically, from unconscious structure. And I was like, how do you know that? Basically. And he didn't really have that much of an answer exactly. He just kind of said that that was basically Leibniz's error. And because somebody asked him another question when I asked him that, somebody interjected, and they were like, what did Leibniz say? And he went into Leibniz's explanation. He was like, Leibniz said that there was a bunch of souls, where the soul was the most primary structure, aka sentience, and that a bunch of interacting souls are responsible for the creation of space and the perception of all the structures and information that we perceive. And So I didn't really get an answer as to why he thinks that consciousness is emergent and not fundamental, or sentience, more specifically. Um, he looked at my uh, my presentation, my table that I had there, and there was a bunch of people with the tables of their various projects, and I was one of them. And he was looking at a few of them, and he looked at mine because I've got the animation of the cosmological verse, and it looks like his his structures that he uses, like Rule 30 and things like that, to create. And then I'm sure he read, the abstract of the paper that I'm writing, which is on sentientsingularity.com under writings, and where it says that sentience is primary. And he just doesn't agree with that. After that, he wasn't interested in like diving down that rabbit hole too much. But which is fine. I don't speak to anybody to push my theory. Like, that's something that I encounter a lot. A lot of people will message me and they'll be like, "This is my theory," and like, it's actually true. And maybe, I've looked. Usually, those people have some understanding that is true, but isn't mainstream, and is pretty aligned with me in some ways. But and physicists and people who are public figures in the world of physics, Wolfram, Brian Keating, Sean Carroll, I'm sure Neil deGrasse Tyson, Eric Weinstein, like Sabine Hassenfelder, endless people, I'm sure, send them their theories. And so I have not really ever done that. Never tried to convince anyone else, or even just a physics department that's not famous or anything, any physics professors. I've never gone to them with my work because I don't need to. And if they were already onto it, it's those who are already onto it are already onto it. Wolfram is in agreement with me on a lot, not on everything. I'm not going to convince him by forcing my theory down his throat or anything like that. But so if you're watching this, you have your own theory, you could send it to me. I'll take a look briefly, but I'm not gonna. You should pursue it, presenting it to the world yourself. That's what I would recommend. But it's you don't need to convince anyone that already has their own like physics thing or metaphysics thing or whatever that they're working on. Like, you can just make a YouTube channel and start presenting your ideas. You don't have to convince Brian Keating or Sean Carroll. If they're, I mean, physics, mainstream physics is lost, absolutely lost. Like, you're not going to convince them of any kind of theories that, especially those that are involve consciousness or sentience being fundamental, or that's just not the conventional narrative. But they're aware of that idea. They just don't get it. And I was surprised to hear that Stephan Wolfram doesn't believe that consciousness or that observers are fundamental, even though his theory is called observer theory. I mean, the name of your theory should be, describing of that which is your most basic assertion. And if you're trying to have a fundamental theory of physics or metaphysics, kind of, I don't know what the difference is anymore, to be honest. Then you have to have it be named accordingly, so that it is very distilled. It is like an ultimate distillation of the claims in your theory of your models. And observer theory, great name, sounds a lot like sentient singularity theory, but fundamentally very different. Not even just very different, in opposition. But his computational approach has allowed him to agree on all the emergent structures basically, and also where these structures emerge from. It's like it just seems incoherent, his belief. It just does. I mean, if space is constructed or created or generated by observers, which is what his theory basically states, is that we see the laws of physics that we do in space-time that we perceive, because we are the types of observers that we are. But he says that matter, like fundamental elementary particles, electrons specifically is what he said, are constructed of atoms of space that are themselves not observers, all within this rulliad, which is the space of all possible computational, actions, I guess you could say. Anything where the space of possibilities is this rulliad. It's like where the rules of existence or of the universe, it's just the structure of the rules. And this is not, I have had a friend of mine, I'd ask him on an interview years ago, does he think the rulliad is an observer? And I was expecting a yes, and I got a no. And it's in an interview that Kurt Jaimungal did of Stephan Wolfram. And I was surprised by that. And then he, developed his work more, really like focused on the observer part of observer theory, and then created the name observer theory. Actually, I guess he made that. He had just come out with that name right before he went on Kurt's channel, I think, because that's why I asked about observers. But I can't remember the timeline. It was a couple years ago, I think. But the point is that he doesn't think that consciousness or sentience is fundamental, that sentient beings are fundamental. He thinks they're emergent, but he doesn't have an explanation for what they are emergent from. And that is at least incomplete, if not incoherent, but I think both. I think it's incoherent, but maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, then it's incomplete at least. And then you can't claim to have a fundamental theory of the universe if you do not have an explanation for, where elementary particles come from. I mean, you can say atoms of space, but that's a kludge until you can show what an atom of space would be if it's not a sentient being or an observer. And it's funny because, that is a kludge. It's just like he said the Higgs is a kludge, and he's correct. It's a kludge, but his atoms of space are a kludge, just like dark matter is a kludge. And we were trying to avoid kludges. Like, if you have to have a kludge, then whatever the explanation should be, it should be naturally unfolding from the context that you have constructed. And so you should get the answer as you're building your model. And he hasn't gotten the answer yet for what an atom of space is, and what would be responsible for the atoms of space. Like, what are now you have to explain the atoms of space. Like, you can say, okay, well, now I have an explanation for the electron. It's atoms of space that we don't know where they are. It's like the graviton. We've never seen it, never observed it, never measured it. Just have this mathematical kind of apparent need for it, and it's assumed to exist. But then, that's not enough, and it doesn't. This is even worse because it's just passing the buck. It's like when somebody says, well, we need to figure out how cellular life arose on Earth. And somebody goes, well, actually, what if the answer is that it didn't arise on Earth? What if it was on Mars, and then a meteor hit Mars, and then it ejected rocks into space that then fell on Earth, and that's where life came from on Earth. It's like, okay, maybe, but you just moved the goal post. Like you didn't score. You just moved the goal post. Because where did that cellular life come from on Mars? Then, and this is exactly what I think Wolfram is doing with his atoms of space. It's like, well, now we have an explanation potentially for, what electrons are, where they come from. Okay, what are the atoms of space? Okay, now what are the atoms of space then, and where do those come from? No idea yet. You can keep doing that if you don't have sentience as fundamental. You will keep doing that forever. Forever. That is a sign that it's incorrect. If you can't ever get to rock bottom, then that is that's an issue. I mean, I don't think they'll. My hypothesis now is that they'll never find these atoms of space. I mean, unless the atoms of space are like interaction, like I don't know, informational spaces that are formed by interactions between sentient beings, which that could make sense, but that's not that's just a moment, like why would you don't need to call that an atom of space. And then therefore again, it's like then the answer is sentient beings are responsible for are what are responsible for the construction of the atoms of space, if that's the case. And then we're back to sentience is fundamental. So there's really like, I think that Wolfram is in error and that me and Leibniz are right. But I do think Wolfram is right about the Higgs, and I really am a fan of how he is approaching the physics. I think it's novel, and I think it is actually very, very useful. And his computational approach is brilliant, and a lot of what he says is absolutely true. But fundamentally, he is wrong, I think, that's a huge deal. I mean, it basically makes your models practical but not actual. That makes sense. Like they don't give you answers; they just are tools. And people want answers, man. Like, and tools. Like you don't know if your tools are you don't really know if your tools are good tools, and if they're not, in the right context, that context is answers. It's like, I don't know, I'm rambling, but it was an interesting talk. I'm really grateful to have been there. I did tell you, Stephan Wolfram in the interview that I showed clips of last week, he said, the test of whether or not I've met anybody in person is whether or not I have an idea of how tall they are. And I told you guys that at the end of the last stream that I would tell you how tall Stephan Wolfram is. And he is shorter than I expected, to quote a non-Jedi master, famous Jedi turned Sith. He's shorter than I expected. But that's not an insult, because he's still taller than me. I'm shorter than Stephan Wolfram, significantly, but he was pretty average height. That's the answer to that. But I was expecting for some reason him to be tall. You never know how tall people are going to be when you meet them in person after you've seen them online. But Stephan Wolfram was, to quote Anakin, shorter than I expected. But again, not insulting. He's taller than me. But he was nice. He was very nice. And he gave I will say this about him. That man gave everyone like so much attention and time after his talk that wanted to speak with him and wanted to share their projects. He stayed there till super late at night, and he listened to anybody that wanted to speak to him. And it was genuine curiosity. He was like humble guy, like sharing his bag of chips. Like I liked Stephan Wolfram. He was I don't know what the right word is, but he was very what's a word for like just acknowledging of people. Like some people, you meet them and they won't give you the time of day. They can't be bothered, and somebody like Stephan Wolfram is going to get a lot of people who want to speak to him. And he gave everybody as much time as they wanted, one-on-one, and like walked around, looked at everybody's projects and stuff. It was great. Hats off to him. That was really impressive, and not everybody's like that. It's a good thing. So I'm grateful. Anyways, please hit the like button if you are here. There's 2 likes, and there's way more people watching than that. So, but I appreciate everybody here. Please comment any questions that you have in the chat, and we are going to look at a couple things. So, Leibniz. This is the guy who Stephan Wolfram thinks is wrong. And we're going to do an entire episode on Leibniz eventually, because I don't study other philosophers until like somebody says something to me that's about them that's relevant to my work and that interests me. I like to start from scratch and try and do this myself. And I've been way more successful than most philosophers, actually, even well-known philosophers. And I say that honestly, not, to be braggadocious, but just to be honest. And I was looking more into Leibniz, and I know Leibniz's monadology. It seems very similar to my work, but I never really looked that deeply into it. But I've had other people be like, "This is like, is sentient singularity a monad?" And then this was years and years ago, and I had to look up what a monad was. But it says Leibniz was a polymath, mathematician, philosopher, scientist, diplomat who's credited with Isaac Newton with the creation of calculus and many other branches of mathematics. He has been called the last universal genius due to his vast expertise across fields, which became a rarity after his lifetime with the coming Industrial Revolution and the spread of specialization. He's a prominent figure in philosophy and mathematics. He wrote on theology, ethics, politics, law, history, music, technology, and other topics. So what was interesting is that when I was looking at this the other day, and we're going to do a deep dive at some point, but a deep dive for me, which isn't that deep of a dive, on other people's philosophy that are dead. I think Leibniz is one of the best philosophers to have ever lived. And I've known that, but there's just a lot of our philosophers are misrepresented today in school, and so studying them in an academic sense is, especially in a philosophy class, is not usually helpful. And the reason why is because almost all of our greatest philosophers, including Einstein, by the way, were theists. They were theists, and they proposed a god in how they questioned, and in their outlook on the world, they assumed a god. And that is all ignored or explained away, especially in the case of Einstein. You'll have Michio Kaku will be like, Einstein believed in the God of Spinoza, the God of nature. And I believe in the God of nature, the God that created, the universe, which is nature. But he doesn't, that's not what Michio is stating. What Michio is saying is that he's just calling like the laws of physics basically God, and that's not accurate. Like, you don't need to call it God. And he wrote the book The God Equation. God is an equation to him. That's it. God of Spinoza is the God of math. Math is God. And that is not accurate. And the reason why it's not accurate is because you don't need to call math God. You could just call it math. You don't need to call an equation God. It's just an equation. And but God is something specific. God is, by definition, is a sentient being. Is a someone, not just a something. And when you look at Einstein's questions, and that's why I'm saying he was a theist. Is he said, my greatest question is, did God have any choice in the laws of the universe? He didn't say the laws are God. He said, did God have a choice in the laws of the universe? And it is basically ignored by everybody but Eric Weinstein. And it's actually like gaslighting. Michio Kaku is like gaslights Albert Einstein, I think. And so does pretty much every physicist. They all gaslight Albert Einstein. And except maybe Eric Weinstein, but he's not a physicist, and according to accreditation at least. And this is also what's happening to some degree with all these philosophers of the past, Isaac Newton, Leibniz. Their theological basis that they judged everything in the world through, and used as the context for understanding itself, is not spoken about when you learn about the philosophers of the past. They do not speak about it. And so if we look here, and we say at his principles, you can read about them yourself, his ideas, but they're not going to focus on them in a philosophy course because it's just the university system is an anti-theistical system, at least now. But optimism, God assuredly always chooses the best choice, basically. I would agree with this. And but this is not taken seriously by anybody who is getting their degree in philosophy for the most part. That's not true always. There are some philosophy professors out there that are theists, and so I'm not trying to make a blanket statement, but I'm saying as far as the narrative goes, the mainstream narrative, this is maybe repeated, but it's not actually taken seriously. They don't understand. If you're not a theist, you do not understand why this is relevant to everything else that you come up with. But identity, monads. Leibniz is best known for his contribution to metaphysics, is his theory of monads. He proposes this theory that the universe is made of an infinite number of simple substances known as monads. Monads can also be compared to the corpuscles of the mechanical philosophy of René Descartes and others. These simple substances, or monads, are the ultimate units of existence in nature. Monads have no parts, but they still exist by the qualities that they have. These qualities are continuously changing over time, and each monad is unique. They are not affected by time. They're also not affected by time and are subject to only creation and annihilation. Birth and death, maybe. Monads are the centers of force. Substance is force, while space, matter, and motion are merely phenomenal. He argued against Newton that space-time and motion are completely relative. As to my own opinion, I have said more than once, I hold space to be something merely relative as time is. Then I hold it to be an order of coexistences, as time is an order of successions. Einstein, who called himself a Leibnizian, wrote that Leibniz was superior to Newtonianism. Okay, so let's look at this. Now, sentientsingularity.com. By the way, all of this was done without... that's the first time that I've read that much about Leibniz ever is, I read that Wikipedia, about half of that Wikipedia article earlier this week. That's it. And I knew about his monadology. I looked it up years ago, but it was still well after I had started the channel and had come up with these models. So if you go to writings and you go, Sentient Singularity Theory categorizes the fundamental building blocks of the cosmos to be sentient beings, and that sentience is the universally defining nature and animating feature of the most fundamental structures in existence. Sentient Singularity Theory attempts to display that how space, time, matter, force, and all other physically observable phenomena are generated by the actions, perceptions, and cognitive processes of interacting sentient beings. Sentient singularities, I use that term because they are indivisible single structures. And what's interesting is if you read this, it says singularity is defined as something that is one distinct unit or something that is especially unique. Here you go. They are the ultimate units of nature. These qualities are continuously changing over time, like sentient beings do. And each monad is unique. Even I'm amazed that it's even that specific, especially unique. Sentient Singularity Theory is basically monadology, but monad is used in cosmic philosophy to refer to the most basic or original substance. The monad is therefore supreme being, divinity, or the totality of all things. Being. Not thing, being. According to some philosophers of the early modern period, most notably Leibniz, there are infinite monads, which are the basic and immense forces, elementary particles, and simplest units that make up the universe. I don't know if he would believe that the elementary particles are monads, actually. Maybe, but they're not beings, and there's like the electron was not, the standard model did not exist when Leibniz was alive. So to say that this is actually like gaslighting, even if, we can't know what he would think. But I would assume not that he wouldn't think that, because monad is a sentient being, it seems. Leibniz concluded that there must be a monadum, or God. Well, that's sounds like sentient singularity theory. Leibniz uses geometry book as an example to explain his reasoning. All that we see and experience are subject to change, and the fact that the world is contingent can be explained by the possibility of the world being arranged differently in space and time. The ontological essence of a monad is its irreducible simplicity. Unlike atoms, monads possess no material or spatial character. Okay, so they're like spiritual. They also differ from atoms by their complete mutual independence, so that interactions among monads are only apparent. Instead, by the virtue of principle of pre-established harmony, each monad follows a pre-programmed set of instructions peculiar to itself, so that the monad knows what to do at each moment. Monad will not be small. Need not be small. Each human being constitutes a monad. Okay, exactly. I would say yes. Each human being is a sentient singularity, in which case free will is problematic. Okay. I don't know. I mean, it's not, though. We all have instructions. They're called instincts, and we also have the ability to make choices. Monads get rid of the interaction between mind and matter arising in the system of Descartes. Yep, same thing as sentient singularity theory. Lack of individuation inherent to the system of Spinoza, which represents individual creatures as merely accidental. Yeah, okay, so Spinoza. It's funny. You know what? This is what I mean by the gaslighting BS of physicists. Michio Kaku said that Einstein believed in the God of Spinoza. If you look here, it looks like Spinoza believed that, individual creatures arising, sentient beings arising was an accident, was merely accidental. This is presented here as in opposition to Leibniz, and apparently Einstein himself called himself a Leibnizian. So literally the opposite of what Michio Kaku said. Michio Kaku believes in Spinoza's model and wants Einstein to believe in Spinoza's model, but it seems like he disagrees with Spinoza's model, and disagrees with Michio Kaku. And that's why Einstein was Einstein. That's why he did what he did, is because he had a conceived context that was accurate enough to allow for him to perceive something real. And that context is theistic. You don't ask the question, did God have any choice in the rules of the universe, if you don't believe in God? You do not ask that question. It is not a metaphor. Okay? Like, Sean Carroll would never ask that question. Never. He might now say that he asks that question because Einstein asked that question. But Sean Carroll would not naturally ask that question. Ever. It's talked about in physics departments a little, in physics talks, like public facing talks, but I don't think it's talked about among physicists or in physics classrooms. It does not seem to be. I've never taken a physics class. I've watched countless physics lectures online. That's how I learned about all of this stuff. You can watch Feynman's lectures online. I'm pretty sure his last lecture is on YouTube. It's like famous lecture. And you don't need to take a physics class. You can watch, you can go learn quantum mechanics from Sean Carroll, about the current state of quantum mechanics from Sean Carroll. I did that. He's a great teacher, actually. He's just wrong about the nature of the universe, but he is a good teacher about what is the current narrative. I recommend, if you want to learn what the mainstream narrative of physics currently is, let's go to Sean Carroll's YouTube channel, watch his lectures, and his listen to his podcasts and stuff about it. He's a very good teacher. Okay, so he was a real one. What's up, Goldstein? How's the Brotherhood going? It's going good. I don't know which Brotherhood you're talking about. I have developed a new scientific model. It's called Quantum Gravity Model Framework plus Photon Arrival Trajectory plus Gaussian Metric. I've developed a new theory for physics and quantum physics mechanics. That's cool. I did without any college credentials to my name, and no one will give me the light of day to explain anything I have to bring to the table, the scientific community at large. Make a YouTube channel like me. That's what I did. And guess what? I know that prominent people watch this channel in the physics discussions and take it seriously. There's always ankle biters in the comments sometimes. That'll be like, oh, the channel is only getting this many views and you've been at it for years. This is a dying channel. But it's not about how many views you get. It's about which views you get if you're actually trying to engage with a community. It's not about reaching the most amount of people. There's why I would not want that. I like to read the comments. And if there's too many people watching, you won't see the comments. And also, like I've said before, I'm well aware that live streams, 2 to 3 hour long live streams at 8 to 10 p.m. Central on a Thursday night is not the way to grow the audience for, if that's your primary goal. It's just not. But I would be making 10 to 15 minute videos, and they would be very new agey in style, and if I wanted to maximize views, and they would be kind of ominous. But that's not what I want to do. I want to dive into the rigor, but the philosophical rigor, really. And that's what I do on this channel. But that also means that you have to listen to my, countless side tangents about seeing armadillos. If you watched the last stream, you would know what I was talking about. Yeah, physicists in college are lost. Do not at universities for the most part. Not all of them, but most of them are lost. You don't need to convince them. Start a YouTube channel and see who watches. Just try and explain things as clearly as you can, and that's my advice. You don't need to convince any specific person. You need to just make sure that you are communicating as clearly as you can. And that is difficult when you are discussing novelties. But Pat Arrival D suggests photons. Orientation isn't rule-based, it's curvature synced. Gaussian geometry outperformed hypergraph drift, time-stamped, and not simulated. I don't know what that means, to be honest. CMB is into a simulation artifact. It's thermodynamic forge, white hole emergence sealed with a timestamp. Expansion does not equal computation. It's curvature ignition. I need to think much more about that before I claim to even understand what you're trying to say. Like I said, this is tough. And I really hope that, I've let everybody know, I've messaged Brian Keating and Eric and I spoke to Wolfram and I've spoken to other people as well and told them that, told them all that I told Wolfram and Eric that they both, said the same thing. And then they both know, cause I know that the message was received by both. And so they are aware that they have this agreement, and I've let other people know of their agreement and suggested them to do a mutual stream together talking about the Higgs and the error and why its inclusion in the standard model is probably an error. That would be an epic stream. You want to advance physics forward, like we need to start using each other's work to contextualize each other's work. Like that's sentient singularity theory does give context actually to a lot of Wolfram's models. It does give context, it seems, to even like structures in geometric unity, like the Omniverse, it seems to. And it seems like geometric unity and Wolfram's observer theory are aligned on the Higgs, so they're providing context to each other. People need to start talking and with each other, forming a coalition to push back on the establishment that is totally lost, and instead of just everybody trying to ignore each other's work so that and racing against each other to see who can come up with the ultimate theory that gets accepted first, and trying to be basically like the next Einstein. This is not something that anybody is immune to. No, Wolfram doesn't need to be the next Einstein. He's Stephan Wolfram. Like his Wolfram Alpha is amazing, and his contributions to physics already, I think, are incredible. And same thing with, I think Eric Weinstein's Observerse is going to be that as well. And so, I think people need to start talking, working together now that more alignment is being noticed. And it's not just, consciousness you think consciousness is fundamental? So do I. That's not enough. And you don't even have to believe that. I don't know if Eric believes that, but I think it makes sense with his work. And I will say that he's put out conflicting messages about his beliefs on what is fundamental. But he said he'd leave it to the philosophers and theologians. Well, I'm a theistic philosopher, so that's why I'm talking about it. And Wolfram does not believe that consciousness is fundamental or sentient beings are fundamental. He said Leibniz believed that a monad was a soul, and a soul was the most basic unit of existence, and their interactions were responsible for the generation of space and matter as well. Like, space and matter are not two separate things. We just perceive structure. The structures in our perception. That structure is conceived of as space or matter, depending on like how we're thinking about it. But it's like space is matter. It's not, they're not two separate things. Like, matter and space are just two different perspectives on structure, on perceived structure. That's it. But yeah, I don't know why he thinks Leibniz was an error. Maybe because it's not the assumed. It didn't go on to become the assumption of mainstream physicists in the 21st century, like that souls were the most fundamental unit. I don't know why he thinks that. I wish I knew. But it also, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because it's wrong. But okay. What's up, memes? I met memes, and memes. I knew Memes of Destruction. Check out his channel. I mean, I've known him for a while as an internet friend, and after meeting him in person, now real life friend. Definitely check out his channel. I've heard Professor Wolfram mention monads in Leibniz before. Not sure. Remember his personal thoughts. He thinks Leibniz was wrong about the fundamental nature of existence. Leibniz is much, and I agree, but Wolfram disagreed with me when I proposed that atoms of space might be observers themselves, and he was like, "No, that was Leibniz's error." That's what he told me at MIT this past weekend. He was like, "That's Leibniz's error, and I'm not making that error. I'm not making that mistake." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna make that mistake." And I'm doubling down. The best and worst part of the internet. I know it's absolutely funny when quantum mechanics can't even do what a darn sundial can do naturally. Ain't that some funny crap? Best and worst part of the internet. You never know who is watching. Yeah, that's definitely true. It's about one critical directive. Earth must survive, and our extinction logic reduction. Logic is destroying our planet. So yeah, it does matter tenfold. I don't know exactly what you're stating, but we're going to be fine. That's what Sentient Singularity Theory seems to suggest, is that God has a plan, and in that plan, we will be fine. But we are in for some rough times. In fact, things will be wonderful eventually, but before they get as better than they've ever been, they will probably get worse than they've ever been. We are in for some rough times. It is unavoidable, but it is also, I think, inevitable that things will eventually end up in a state that is as good as is possible, and far better than it's ever been. I think wisdom will eventually be like fundamental wisdom will be universal, basically, to all sentient beings. And that's not the case right now, especially in physics departments. I mean, guys, at MIT, I will say this. This journey has introduced me to people who inspire me and who I think are advancing science forward. Wolfram is one of them, and many, many others. But listening to the professors at MIT give their lectures was a bit depressing. There was, and there's no reason for it being depressed, but it was unfortunate. It made me a little sad for everybody, because they had people. They had a panel that was there of thinkers, and I'll share their names in a minute. I'll go look on my phone, including the chaplain, the atheist chaplain of MIT, who is I forgot his first name, but I think his maybe Will Epstein. His last name is Epstein. That I know. But he's an atheist, and he's the chaplain. I thought chaplains were supposed to be theists, but apparently not. And that was the chaplain that they had, that was there, that was giving a talk about like how AI is going to affect people in the future, and you know, the just how technology will impact humanity going forward, and what we can do about it to kind of overcome the negatives, or minimize the negatives. And they were just not talking about the most important things. Like, not a single person on that stage mentioned marriage, and they were all married. All of them had a wedding ring on, I'm pretty sure. I looked. Not a single one of them mentioned marriage, and was like, this is a crisis of meaning and marriage. Like, the lack of marriage is a huge problem that's going to destroy society, which is Sentient Singularity Theory is part of Sentient Singularity Theory, actually is. That is, it's the level, it is how you organize information on levels above the individual human, is through marriage structures. That's what creates human society. It is what allows for the creation of technology. I mean, without marriage, there's no tech. There's no tech without marriage. There's no society. There's no civilization. There is just little tiny, tribes, and that's basically it. And who are hunter-gatherers, and there is no advancing beyond that. And not a single one of them mentioned marriage, though, and they were like giving platitudes to climate change, guys. And I have family that work for universities, and I know the insanity of those institutions, and I hear about it like behind the scenes. It's worse than people even paint it in, the right wing conversations online. And it's not something to be mocked. It's something that's actually like really unfortunate. Is they're recognizing and acknowledging that there's like major issues with society and with individuals' sense of meaning and direction and what seems like the future of our flourishing. They were talking about human flourishing on this panel, and Sam Harris talks about this too. Human flourishing, this like statement or term, human flourishing, and they don't define what it is at all. And I think that's very important that you define what it is. And you have to think about what it would mean for you to flourish. Like, what would you want in order to flourish? Not everybody will have the same idea, but there will be a general consensus of, I want to, have a partner with somebody in life, and I want to, have a family and succeed economically and socially and spiritually and biologically, sexually, whatever, like, all those different ways. They don't talk about that. They just talked about like, how do we ease the our anxieties about climate change, basically. Like, that wasn't everything. There was one woman, I take this back a bit. It's like, there was one woman who, what's funny is she was like the most like hippie type of person on who gave a talk there. She was the only one that was like, we need to be making more babies, and Elon Musk's proposal for AI virtual fake girlfriends is not a good idea. And I was like, good, thank you for saying that. But you need to go, it's not enough to say this is wrong. You have to say this is, you have to say what is right. There's no direction by calling out something as wrong. It's like, this is why our scientific progress partially has just stopped. There was a critical paper that was put out of geometric unity by a guy named Tim and an anonymous co-author who, I don't know why he needs to be anonymous. And I don't think being anonymity is good online, as for men at least. Maybe for women it is different, but for men it is horrible. And they put out this critical paper basically stating that Eric Weinstein's geometric unity is all nonsense and it should not be taken seriously, before he even put out his own personal paper on it. And then nobody really, like, I don't know, Eric doesn't engage with this person really, and I don't blame him at all. I don't think he should. But the point is that I bring this up only to state, like, this idea that you have to take seriously every critic is not science. Science is not advanced by critics. It is advanced by people who are constructing things, not destructing things. What you do have to do is you have to look at what other people are constructing, even if you are constructing something, and you have to be like, okay, yeah, me and Stephan Wolfram, Sentient Singularity Theory and Observer Theory, very aligned on all this stuff, not on that. That's where we diverge. Okay. Here's my reasoning for having my idea. But if you don't have an alternative, then you can't even know whether or not your criticism is coherent, because coherence is not constructed in critique. That's a statement for the ages. Coherence is not constructed in critique. It's not. It's constructed in construction. Like, that's where because it has to be. That's the thing. It has to be. When you build, you have to build on something that exists. It's one thing to criticize, I don't know, a house, and it's like another thing to propose a different way of building, a house, and then you can show this is actually how we should build houses. This is a terrible metaphor, but maybe it works. Let me know in the chat. But you cannot really be someone who is contributing to science by being a critic. You can't. It's not enough. You have to propose, like, something else. And if you don't, then you're just an observer of science unfolding. You are a spectator. You are not a participant. Even if you could write a million papers critiquing somebody's theory, and their theory might be wrong. But if all you did was write papers critiquing their theory, you're still just a spectator. You're just a spectator who thinks that they are in the game, which is kind of hilarious. It's like, what was his name? When Salt Bae grabbed the World Cup and kissed it and held it up, and everybody got pissed because he's not on the team, but he went onto the pitch and, like, grabbed it and acted like he was part of the team. It's like, you're that guy in science. The problem is that there's a lot of Salt Baes in science right now. It's actually probably mostly Salt Baes, but they're not actually in science. They're not in the what is it? Like the endeavor. They're not part of the endeavor. They're not part of the journey. They're just watching other people go through the journey. And if you're writing critiques, then you think that you're part of the journey, but you're not. But even if you're wrong, you are advancing science by proposing something and speaking to others about it and presenting your work, because that's how people see what ideas and what potentialities are out there. what possibilities are out there, what possible answers there are to questions that we have, what possible questions there are to answers that we, didn't know we needed, or that we're seeking and we don't have like a specific outline for, which is a lot of questions. But if all you do is critique, you're not helping. So I don't know where exactly like what led to that, but I will say that is basically the state of physics and all fields, is like, oh, so and so put out this theory, it's not string theory, we're gonna criticize it if we even acknowledge it. And you have to acknowledge the work of others. If you can't just be like, I'm working on my own thing. I'm working on my own thing too. Guess what? I think it's really probably the best piece of metaphysical work that's been done since Leibniz, probably. I really mean that. The only other person who might come close is Chris Langan. But Chris Langan doesn't use the best terminology. He's a little bit too, I don't know what the right word is. It's not the best terminology. Like even the name of his theory, this cognitive theoretic model of the universe. It's like, okay. Do you think it's a sentient singularity, a singular sentient being? Yeah, he does. So, but it might be simpler to just say that. But I understand, like, it depends on what you're focusing on. I'm not saying he's wrong, but I actually think his CTMU is probably, it's one of the best pieces of philosophical work that has been done again since Leibniz, probably. And he's not acknowledged by the mainstream at all. So, and part of that, there's a lot of reasons for that, actually, but it's not just the lack of a PhD. I don't have a PhD, but a lot of people look into his work and do take it very, very seriously, and they should. It's very serious work. Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap that we don't hear about. It's all me. At least that's what it seems like, though I'm guilty too. I'm guilty, but we're all guilty of all kinds of things. But the point is that on this channel, I try and show my work, but I also try and show why the context that it could provide to the work of others that I would agree with for the most part. And I try and keep my criticism to specifics, at least. And I'm ripping down anybody's work. I actually think geometric unity and Wolfram's observer theory are like probably two of the best proposals to advance physics that are out there currently. And I think that they should both be taken very seriously, and I think they should start talking and see what type of experiments we can do to confirm some of the alternative ideas that are presented for why we have the observation of the phenomenon that we use the Higgs field and Higgs boson to kind of explain. But that's the thing, is like, you can't just say, well, the Higgs is wrong, guys. If I just said that, oh, the Higgs is wrong, it's a kludge, it's wrong, it's an illusion, but left it at that is not going to help. But that's not what Wolfram did, and it's not what Weinstein seems to have done either. They seem to have alternative explanations, actual alternative explanations for the observables that are attributed to the Higgs. And this is what you need. You can't just be like, ew, so-and-so's theory is wrong. Why? It's like when Wolfram said, oh, that was Leibniz's error and I'm not making the same error. Okay, why is it an error? Why was Leibniz wrong? He wasn't Yeah, I think there's a lot of. If you have any document blog or something, I would be interested to take a look. Some of what you said resonates with me. Sentient Singularity. Oh, you're memes talking to Amber. Yeah, post it in the comments below. Not just the chat. My model is based off first principles, also known as common sense. A stone sundial can capture photons. Your hand does this by feeling heat. Same principle, different intake logic. Yeah, you have to find out what is the first principle if you're going to think about things from first principles. What is the truest thing that you know? What does that mean? And everybody has the same answer to that question, by the way. But you actually you have to think about what is the first question too. So I talk about this all the time on here, but the first question is, what is the first question? That is the first question, is what is the first question? And the answer to what is the first question is, what is the first question? So it is a question that answers itself with itself. Perfectly coherent, with perfect coherence. It is entirely this self-contained, ask and answer like loop. And that's evidence that it really seems to be the first question. But then you have to break the symmetry and in order to start, constructing. And so you have to say the next question, which is, what is the truest thing that I know? Because you have to find out, what am I building on? And that's the answer to that is what you're going to build on. And the answer to that for everybody is I am. That is the answer, is sentient being is the truest thing that I know to exist, is sentient being, my sentient beingness. But that's not just that is not just relevant to any kind of scientific theories. It is super relevant to all scientific theories. And it is ignored by all of mainstream science right now. Why? Because, I look at this pen, it doesn't seem sentient. I know. That's not the point. They're not thinking about what it means to think. Like, you have to figure out what it means to think first and then start thinking. You can't just be like, oh, what do I think is going on? Well, I think Leibniz was wrong. Okay. Have you thought about what the first question is? And what is the truest thing that you know? Because you have to. That's pretty rad. Just think of photosynthesis and plants, same process, different. That was pretty rad. I think I have another photo of you and Wolfram talking to individuals of interest. Please send me that. I know you can send it to me right now, Matt. Memes. You have my number now. Oh, you did send it to me. Nice. Okay. Well, here. Wow, I'm losing my hair. There's Stephan Wolfram and me. You can see he's taller than me. But I have more hair for now. That won't last long. So but such is life. Gotta embrace it. The universe isn't. Again, for anybody that wasn't here earlier, I will say just again, like, while I'm being critical of Wolfram's fundamental assumptions, I said earlier, that guy is doing so much that I think is amazing and accurate in terms of, the non-fundamental, and just maybe more fundamental than our current physics models, but not as fundamental as can possibly be. And also personally, that I was so impressed by how much time he gave to everybody who wanted to talk to him. Like, there were people that spoke to him for like over an hour, just one person, and he gave them all of it. And it was impressive. That's just a rare quality in somebody like that. It really shows that you really are onto something. Like if you are willing to entertain other people's ideas like that, you really are probably advancing in your own work, because when you advance in your own work and you see that you can learn new things just in your own work, then you take people seriously who don't have the credentials um, and social clout, because you know that that's not what's necessary. But if you don't know that that's um, uh, if you're not advancing in your own work, even if you think that you are but you're not, then your only judgment is on people's credentials. And so you'll listen to somebody if they have, if they're another famous physicist at, prestigious university or whatever, but that you won't listen to somebody who in their base, off time through first principles actually like derived the fundamental nature of the universe potentially. Um, but the thing is, you don't need to go to college to logically derive the most fundamental truths about the nature of existence. It's funny because even Leibniz said this. He said, where did he say this? He said, he said, where is it? Where was it? He said something about how you could derive ultimate truths from first principles. Okay. His beliefs that metaphysical necessity must have a rational or logical foundation, even if this metaphysical causality seemed inexplicable in terms of physical necessity. And he said, where is it? I know it's in this Wikipedia article, so I read it. I can't find it right now, but it's on there. He basically said the same thing. He was like, you can figure this stuff out. You don't need to go to get a PhD, and you don't need to wait for the results from CERN. Like, that's just to confirm a prediction. You can't learn anything about the nature of the universe. You can't figure out what the nature of the universe is at CERN. You might be able to confirm a prediction that is aligned with something that you assume about the nature of the universe, but that's it. Like you're not. I saw somebody shared with me today one of these articles that just goes around, and friends of mine send me this, and it was like, physicists now show that your intuition might be your awareness of future memories that haven't happened yet. Your future self is basically sending information back in time to, and you're experiencing it as like, intuition. And I didn't even click on it, to be honest. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that this is like there's nothing that shows that. Okay, there might be things that might be compatible with that, but there's nothing that shows that. And this, I saw somebody who I respect, they said, this, math equation shows that basically proves that we are in a simulation. It's like, okay, what do we mean by simulation? And then they gave their explanation for a simulation, which is not what I would define it as. And it's not what people assume when they hear it. But there's no way that a math equation proves exactly like what they were proposing. There are logical and definitional constraints that you have to follow, and those are equations, basically. They're linguistic equations, but they imply certain things, but they don't. You can't just say this one thing implies this whole like detailed explanation. You don't know what he had said, but he basically said like that we all basically the same thing as the whole you're sending information back into your past self, and that's what you experience as intuition. He's basically saying that a simulation, by simulation he meant that that we as a soul basically project our being into this physical space, and we are aware of ourselves on a much deeper level than just here, and we're just here to learn more basically and about ourselves. And like that, I don't think that is consistent with what most people think of when they think of the term simulation. Most people think it means we're inside of a technological construct that was created by someone else. That's, would be, we're running on a technological substrate, basically. That is actually compatible, and not just compatible, but implied by Sentient Singularity Theory. But it's not a simulation, because the other definition of a simulation is that it's a model. It's like a metaphor of reality, but it's not reality. It's a distilled simulation of reality, meaning it's not reality. It's not meaning what really that means is that there's no one actually experiencing anything in the simulation, because then it would be that person's reality. And as I've said on here before, if you want to figure out whether or not you're in a simulation, just ask yourself, am I real? And if you can ask that, then you're real. If you're real, it's real. Is it is our universe running on a technological substrate in a preceding universe or a preceding verse? That's a good question. But is it a simulation? It's a bad question. If you're real, it's real. And just right there, all you needed was to think about things from first principles. You didn't have to go and look at equations and get results from some physics experiment. If you're real, it's real. You just have to shift your perspective into recognizing that the definer of the answer to this question is you. And you don't need anyone else to confirm your own existence. But this is, Leibniz said this. He said you could derive from definitions. That was the word that I saw in here. Definition. Okay, here we go. Found it. Just needed to remember the words that I read earlier this week. Here we go. His philosophy also assimilates elements of the scholastic tradition, notably the assumption that some substantive knowledge of reality can be achieved by reasoning from first principles or prior definitions. I talk about this all the time. This is why I'm such a stickler for definitions. You can't do this if your if your definitions are not really good, really, really good. That's why I don't say consciousness, or I try not to. I say sentience. So the definition is more specific. And it's funny because I took video of Wolfram's interview that Wolfram, that my friend conducted of Wolfram at this event, and he said, "We are. He was like, what do we know? What do observers like us know? Most, and." What defines an observer like us? And he said, well, for one, we experience ourselves in time, which is basically we have a single string of experience in time. What this basically means is that you are self-aware, you're aware of your own existence, and that existence is operating within, that there are changes being made outside of you. That's what is, that are not you. That's what it's basically stating. And it's funny because he said we have a singular feeling that we exist in time. It's funny because I said many years ago, I was like, I don't have to even convince anybody that sentient singularity theory is correct. If it is correct, and even the name is correct enough, it will just win because the truth will out. And it's like Wolfram couldn't even describe the truest things about, when he tried to describe the structure that is the observation itself, which is the context of any physics model. He basically said sentient singularity. He said we have this perception of ourselves as this. He said we feel that we are, which is why I say sentience, because we don't just think we are, we feel we are. We feel, I feel, therefore I am. Not I think, therefore I am. You can exist and not be thinking. Only sentient beings can think, and sentient beings can think. But sentient beings do feel. You can't help but feel, but you don't have to think. You can still be sentient. The concept of the definition of self-awareness is not thinking about yourself, like as from the third person or something, or the mirror test. People were talking to me about the mirror test at this. I forgot who it was. The mirror test is not a good test. It's just not. Like it's a terrible test as to what whether or not a being is self-aware. Like it's just the mirror test is a test of the awareness of mirrors. Like that's what it is. It's not a test of awareness of self. It's a test of awareness of mirrors. Do you know what a mirror is? Not do you know that you exist. It's do you know that mirrors exist and that they will reflect, you back at yourself? That's what the mirror test actually shows, is whether or not like a being is aware of or has an understanding of mirrors, or even has an interest in mirrors. Leibniz, brilliant. He really was. But I got to find that clip of Wolfram. The universe isn't schizophrenic. No, it's not. It doesn't substitute one set of rules for another. Science, mathematics, physics. Exactly. There is the structure of mind, and that's it. And what you're looking at and the moment that you're observing and your goal will change what you see, but you are always looking at it through the glasses of the structure of information processing, which is the structure of mind itself. Like there's no way around that. There are 6 primary and secondary colors, 3 primary, 3 secondary colors, because it's the structure, due to the structure of mind, not due to colors. It's due to your mind. It's due to how information must be ordered in terms of how it is arranged in a symmetry structure of relationships. It's how certain bits of information are thought of as in how they relate to other bits of information. Like a color wheel. And this is your mind is ordering information. Same thing with order of operation in mathematics. Same thing with your limbs. Same thing with your sensory organs themselves. You have 6 senses for the same reason that you think of yourself as having 6 senses for the same reason, or you perceive yourself as having 6 senses for the same reason that you perceive 3 primary and 3 secondary colors. And by the way, when I say 6 senses, I'm including emotion as the 6th sense. Nobody includes that one. It's the most obvious one. It's the most fundamental one. People think that the 6th sense is like you can see ghosts. No, it's that you can see yourself. You can feel yourself. It's emotion is the sixth sense. It's not, that's not a metaphorical statement. It is a super true statement. It's a super literal statement. And like it's ignored. It's not even thought of as a sense. That's crazy. It is the sense. It's the sense of self. It's feeling emotion. And it's feeling your context in the world, fundamentally, not the context of your body. That's, yeah, physical pain, the brightness of the lights and the colors that you see and the textures that you feel. That's all about your physical place. But your metaphysical place, which is more fundamental and then I'm not going to say more true, it's more fundamental. It is what gives context to what you see physically. And it's also influenced by what you perceive physically, but it is what gives rise to emotion, is your place, your relationships, for you, not for your body, but for you, your soul, your you-ness, your sentient singularity. That's why, I don't know, something happens in your life and it causes you to feel an emotion. It changed so you perceived a change in your position, your metaphysical position. And it's just like so it's undeniable to, and it is experienced by everybody, but it is not acknowledged by anyone in science, because I can't know what you're feeling without you telling me, basically. I don't even know if you feel. Just assume that if you say you do, you do. But if you also, if there isn't anyone in the world that would say, oh yeah, no, you're saying that like emotions are that emotions exist and that you can feel your feelings, but I don't, and so therefore it's not universal and it might just be your imagination. Nobody says that. Everybody knows that emotions are real, yet they're not considered like a sense, which is weird. But this is all the structure of mind. That's the context. In fact, it's the context is your mind inside of mind interacting with other minds, with that is physically composed of an assembly of smaller minds, cells. That's the context. It's just minds and minds and minds, and of course, everything you see is going to be structure of, in the context of the structure of mind. But we don't think about that in physics. Like we think this is why red, because it's this wavelength, and that, I'm not saying that's wrong, but why red? I'm gonna have this guy, this rabbi, on. I think I want to ask him to come on. I haven't asked him yet. His name is Manis Friedman, and he's one of the best rabbis that are out there. Now, I don't agree with anyone on everything, but I agree with everyone on something. And but he is a very wise man. He's 14 children, and he talks about marriage a lot. If you want marriage and relationship advice, like, his videos are the best I've ever seen on the internet. But I want to have him on at some point to talk about God and marriage, and morality, kind of context of morality. But then and also just like a truly, like, what is like theist's perspective on religion, especially somebody who is a member of a very distinctive of a community with a very distinctive culture, which is Hasidic Jews. They all even dress alike. Like, it's, that's a very specific, religious community. And I think that we get the definition of religion is nonsense. There is nothing that is religion. Um, like there are different traditions, and that's it. But it's but he says this too, and I want to have him on to talk about it. But what he said, and the point is this total side tangent, is in an interview that I was listening to of him today. He said, "We always ask the how, and we never ask the why anymore in science, because the why requires intentionality to exist. Otherwise, there is no why. If it was no one's goal, or if it's not contextualized within the context of a goal of someone, then there is no why. There's just, it is because it is. And there are certain logical constraints for sure that, I don't believe in the fine-tuning hypothesis or anything like that. I don't think God had any choice in the rules of the universe. I just think he had to choose to make it. But I also recognize that we cannot honestly ask questions about why without placing someone as the context, even ourselves. It's like, oh, you're a mind? Okay. What is the structure of mind, and then you will see that in the standard model. It's like, okay, that it seems like that's an unavoidable constraint that we have now, and yet it is kind of an not even ignored, but like a rejected constraint. I mean, the amount of people that I saw arguing that there is that observation has nothing, that you can make an observation without actually like making an observation. You could just have a machine make an observation basically, and then you don't make an observation, and that proves that you don't need an observer to manifest or generate space or a certain particle or a certain I don't know, perspective that is perceived was like endless a few years ago in the physics community online. They were all saying this, and it's like, no, you're still making the observation. You're just using a machine to help you. Like, there's no way that you separate an observer from an observation, and yet people said that you could. I mean, Sabine Hassenfelder said that. My jaw kind of dropped, and I wasn't that surprised, but like I was also. It's still surprising when I sit back and think about like how lost academia, a lot of people in academia, the majority are. It's insane. It's not like they're just wrong on the Higgs. Like, they are wrong about what it means. They're not even approaching this properly. They didn't learn how to think. Thinking is an action. It is an active process that you can get better at. It's not about IQ. You can have an IQ of 80, and you can think coherently, and you can ask the most fundamental and profound questions about the nature of the universe, and you will come up with the answers. And you can have an IQ of 200, and you can never ask the right questions, and reject the correct context, and you will never understand even yourself. You will never have a coherent understanding of your world, because you won't have a coherent understanding of yourself. It's wild to see it, though. It's so rampant in our universities. But the thing is, like, you don't need to convince the universities. We don't need to convince Sean Carroll of God, and that's God's job. And we just need to be honest and clear, and that's it about our beliefs, and put them on the internet, and the right person will find them. That's that I believe. I have publications on science is common sense. Bro, I'm trying to grab your attention now so we can talk about the ground. Attention, I'm trying to offer you a front row seat to a new era in physics and cosmology. Just an invitation through this little comment section. Okay, well, this is that too. And so I appreciate you being here. Make a channel. this is like a little comment on here is not going to be enough. You are going to need, and also, if you're listening to me still, you and I are probably in agreement on a decent amount of things. And so you don't need to convince me. You just need to go out there and put your views online and be as clear as you can. And that's it. Humans pay attention to other humans with clout. That never happens. What is clout? I'm not familiar with that term. Clout is popularity. That's it. Coolness factor. I don't agree that anyone in the institutions is offering common sense. Instead, it's reduction in mathematics as dogma. That's definitely the mainstream norm. You are right. But there are some people that are actually doing great work in academia. Michael Levin, one of those people. He's doing incredible work. He would probably agree with Leibniz and me on a lot. He definitely does. I know that. And then, there's even philosophers out there that are doing great work, and other professors. There's even a couple in AI that are doing good work. Elon Barinholtz, he's doing good work. They're out there, but it's rare. If you want to know a lot of these people, like, you should watch Kurt Scheimungel's channel, Theories of Everything. He interviews a lot of them. Kurt finds good people to interview, who are always all those interviews are always so interesting, and it's usually people who are making progress on some things, even if they're not right on the most fundamentals. On the most fundamentals concepts. Some of them are, but you don't have to be, actually, which is kind of amazing, but it does limit you. Stephan Wolfram is an example here. Somehow his computational approach gave him a workaround, and he can do things. But he even said this, this is what's fascinating. Sean Carroll cannot predict a damn thing at all. Okay, that shows you his assumed context of physics. His assumptions about the nature of the universe are totally false. That's evidence of. He can't predict anything. His only prediction is basically that is like, kind of fundamental prediction, is this many worlds idea that there might be an infinite number of universes, and we just happen to be in the one with the laws of physics that accidentally led to, the manifestation of a self-aware soup. I don't know. And the thing is about this is that this is a terrible idea. It's not even it's just flat out incoherent. I don't want to say insane or crazy, because that has some judgmental connotations to it that I'm not trying to demonstrate, but just judging it on its own logic, it is totally incoherent. The idea that there are infinite numbers, there is an infinite number of universes out there, and that they can all have different laws of physics, is completely incoherent with logic itself and any mathematical grounding at all. Like, 1 + 1 will equal 2 in every universe. It will. Because 1 is 1. And it just is indivisible. There is no... It is the fundamental structure, is singularity. Because of that, it causes a cascade of constraints that basically make it so you have no choice in the laws of physics. There probably are an infinite number of universes being generated. They probably all have the same exact laws of physics, just different people living in them, and different individual beings. But probably exactly the same laws of physics. And if that logic didn't hold, you wouldn't be able to predict anything. Mathematics wouldn't exist. The idea of first principles wouldn't work. I mean, there's nothing that would work in terms of sense making anymore. If one is not one, and therefore 1 + 1 = 2, and 1 + 1 + 1 = 3, like, if that's not the case, there's no logic. Like, there's no understanding, there's no information, there's no interpretation, there's no extrapolation, there is no nothing. There's no information anymore because there's no context that is coherent and constructive and self-defining, self-contained, self-generating. Like, there's none of that. And so basically this idea of many worlds, and we just have is it's just a kludge to try and explain why life, why sentient beings have appear to exist in the universe. But that the whole entire worldview that even allows for you to think that sentient beings have evolved in the universe is incompatible with what is fundamentally the truest thing that you know, and also I think what is logically extrapolatable, inevitably. And so, I mean, it's just the whole context is wrong. Like, your context is wrong, and context is information. There's no information outside of context. The context is information, and you basically have to, like, tell Sean Carroll his whole, like, everything he thinks is would be defining of the questions that he's asking is wrong. He needs to throw it out. It's like we should not even be asking, how did life begin? Like that, you need to look at the definitions that you're using and examine them first, and then look at the truest thing that you know and contextualize what the definition of life within the context of the truest thing that you know. The truest thing that you know is that you exist and you feel. You are a sentient being. You are a single sentient being. You have a conception and perception of self. And so then you should not be looking at a cell and being like, I'm gonna say that that's alive, and so somehow cells got here. What is the properties of cells if we want to define it? Oh, it's reactive, it's consuming, it's excreting, it's got a metabolism, blah blah blah, whatever. Like, it's made of cells because it is a cell. All of these things, this is the definition of life. No. Are you alive? Yes. You know you're alive. You don't even know if that cell is alive. You think it is. So you're using something that you think is alive, but you don't know is alive, to come up with the definition of life. You can't do that. You're assuming. I can't even explain it. It's so incoherent. You're basically putting the cart before the horse, and then you're disconnecting the two of them and expecting them to stay together. It's just like, it's that crazy. It really is. I'm not just sounding like I'm crazy. It is crazy. Like, why are you even asking the question, what is the origin of life, if you don't even have a definition that's first-hand definition? What you should look at yourself, say, I'm alive. What makes me alive? I feel, therefore I am. Okay. So, feeling is the definition of life. Now, what is the origin of sentience? Is kind of like the term we use for beings that have the nature of feeling, or things that feel, which is a being. Now we just ask, what is sentience? And, like, you will see that it is an inevitability. Not an inevitability of that there's a multiplicity of sentient beings, But it is inevitable that there's a singularity of sentience always. Existence is sentient. It is a single self-contained, self-referential information system that is entirely self-referential and entirely self-contained. It only can inform itself, be informed of itself, and inform itself about itself. Like, this is feeling. This is emotion, actually. Like, that's what, and then, then now we can start asking questions of, how did multiplicity of sentience happen? That's a different question than, how did life begin? What the heck do you even mean when you ask that question? You don't even know. You think you know because you say, oh, well, I mean cells, like cellular life, biological life. Okay, it's an interesting question to ask. How did cellular life start in the universe? That's a good question. But the issue is that you are misdefining life, and you need to expand the definition of life to just be sentient beings. And maybe they're not all cells or composed of cells. Maybe they precede cells. Maybe a proton is sentient. Maybe existence is sentient. Maybe the universe itself is a sentient being. If that's the case, then you're going to ask very different questions about and come to very different conclusions about the origin of life. You realize how empty that question is. But we don't even realize it. That's how lost they are. I mean, it is so incredibly lost. It's not just wrong about like a couple things. I'm not saying that science hasn't made a lot of discoveries that are important and valuable. I'm just saying that the context of those observables is the only way to understand those observables truly, is to recognize them or conceive of them in the correct context, and we do not have the correct context. So sure, you can predict something and then you can prove it, but that doesn't answer the why, like that rabbi said in that interview that I was listening to today. It just is the how. That is not what we're trying to do like anymore. We have enough answers for the how in science. We don't have the whys anymore. We used to in the time of Leibniz, but not anymore. And that is because of God is no longer taken seriously. Like, even the chaplain at MIT was an atheist, a self-described atheist. You can't actually be an atheist. It's this rabbi that I want to have on. He said something brilliant. I say this on here all the time. I say that, there's only theists and anti-theists. Do you believe, if you had to bet all the money in your wallet, even if it's $1, that the universe is sentient or not? What would you bet? If you bet that it's not, then you are an anti-theist. If you bet that it is, you're a theist. There's no way of having no opinion on it, though, because you interact with existence all the time, constantly. You can only be agnostic about. That's why there's agnostic and atheist, and like basically they mean the same thing in definitionally, but they don't in terms of like what people call themselves. Like, anybody that says they're an agnostic about the existence of God is actually just a coward. That's really what it is. They're not a coward. They're being cowardly. They don't want to say what they really believe due to whoever they think is maybe watching. That is it. And you can't be an agnostic about the nature of existence because you exist in it and you interact with it all the time. You can be an agnostic about the existence of aliens or Bigfoot if it's not a subject that you research. But you can't be an agnostic about the existence of God. It's literally impossible. Super literally impossible. And atheist is somebody who has a lack of a belief in God. It's not somebody who disbelieves in God, according to what's his name? um, oh my gosh, Sam Harris. But when you look at like what people who call themselves atheists in practice, and I say this as somebody who called themselves an atheist for 24 years, they disbelieve in God. They don't have a lack of an opinion. No, they disbelieve, and usually it's because they have a incorrect conception of God. Like they just think it's like this dude in the sky throwing lightning bolts or something. And yeah, that God does not exist. But sentient existence as a singular sentient being with emotions and feelings and choice and goals, who makes choices, that God exists. That God can't help but exist. That God couldn't end his own existence even if he wanted to. And but this that's why I say there's no such thing as an atheist, or an agnostic when it comes to God. But the rabbi, he said something funny. He said, almost no one's an atheist, is what he said. He said, it's so much work to be an atheist. You actually have to know a ton about God, and it has to be true. Like, you have to actually know about like what God is proposed to be seriously, not like the tooth fairy version, but like the metaphysically rigorous version, the Leibnizian version of God. Like, you have to know a lot about that being and the logic of it, that argues for that, the existence of that being, and then you have to disbelieve in it. And he's like, it's a lot of work to be an atheist. And that was funny to me, because there's something true about that. You know. All right. Let's go here. I think emotions are of a higher order than other senses, because I think the way we all perceive with the five senses is more or less the same. I think the way we feel emotions is the same. Like sad, happy, excited, scared, angry. These are all experienced. I think that's actually like much more universally experienced. You know how you can prove that this is the case? Music. It doesn't matter what culture you're from, and I think it doesn't even matter what type of animal you are. I think if you played nice, relaxing music, or cheerful music, I think when I play cheerful music, my dog knows it's cheerful. So does my daughter. She's 1.5. She doesn't know what they're saying, but she knows what's happy music and what's sad music. And so like, and it's experienced universally, exactly the same. I think it's more universally like there's people that can't see with their eyes. There's nobody that can't feel with their emotions. There isn't. Anybody that says, oh, there's psychopaths or whatever, I don't even think psychopaths exist. I think that there are people that don't care as much about other people. That's definitely true. And we call them psychopaths. And then there are people that only care about certain people and do not care about people that they don't know. Sometimes people call them psychopaths or sociopaths. But to label somebody as a sociopath or to label somebody as a psychopath is actually probably just incorrect. Everybody feels emotions. But our emotions are the way we process what we take in through the five senses. Yeah, to some degree, the way we do it is different for everyone. I don't think that's true. I don't agree. I don't know if I worded that great, but the fact that it's different for everybody is probably why scientists don't consider it. It's not different for everybody. Have you never been sad? Like, have you experienced an emotion that I haven't? That you think I haven't even? You don't know because you're not me, but like, is there an emotion that you think you've experienced that nobody else has experienced? I don't think so. I think everybody experiences the same emotions. I think every sentient being can experience the same basic emotions. Um, what causes those emotions is different for everyone, but not the emotions. You know, a dog does not have an existential crisis because it doesn't have the ability to abstract beyond its current circumstances. But we can. So we can experience depression. Actually, you know what? I take that back. Animals experience depression. This is like well known. I've seen it in my work with animals. Like this is well known. Like I have seen lizards that their cage mate dies and they just stop eating. Nothing else changes, but they lost the one person, their friend, their friend or their lover, whatever, if it's a male female pair in a cage in a zoo or something, and the girl dies, male often just stops eating, just dies. Why? Why would you do that? You're the one person in your life that is the only other being like you that you interact with, because you're stuck in a box. You're in basically solitary confinement now, and instead of being in a cell for your entire life with somebody that you really cared about and who was either your friend or your sexual romantic lover, just died, and now you're alone, and you know it because who else do you interact with in a cage? Everybody that lives in the cage with you if you are a lizard in a cage at a zoo. I'm not against the lizards in a cage at a zoo. I am against keeping animals in solitary confinement, though. We're all in a cage, but we want to experience a meaningful life. It's not about being in a cage or not being in a cage, being free or not being free. It's about, did you live a meaningful life? What does that mean? Did you impact others? This is true for animals, I think, as well. They don't philosophize about it like we do, but that doesn't mean they don't feel it. They do all the same things we do. They seek a mate, they seek to breed, they seek friendships, they fight rivals, they do all these things that we do. They just don't think about their feelings about it. They just feel about it. They don't think about it. They feel about it. We can think about it, but they can't, probably. They just feel about it. Of course, you're right that everyone has emotions. People forgot that the subjective experience of reality is at least a part of reality itself. It is reality. In Sentient Singularity Theory, I don't say objective very much. I've changed the word. Where I used to say objective, I now usually say super subjective, which is it's the universally subjectively perceived perspective. It's what I see and what you see and what someone else sees. But it's what everybody sees that would be a super subjective perspective. Because when you say it's an objective perspective, it just makes it about objects and not about subjects. But the thing is that there is no such thing as a perspective without subject. It doesn't exist. It is by definition subjective. Every observation, every object is perceived subjectively. And there is no evidence that anything exists outside of of someone. As the context. People from this box is reality. The universe begs to differ. I choose to be out of the box. Humanity built. Sorry, not sorry. Okay. Build a new box. You can't escape a box. You can't be outside of a box. You're always going to be in a box. Just pick the box or build a new box. Life is it. But we're all really in God's box. Like, that's the reality. Life is a natural emergence. It's not a metaphor or some religious spooky action. I don't know what you mean. I will say that the terms you use make answering the question even conceiving of what your answer just was very difficult. A better question would be, is multiplicity an inevitability without the choice by God to make it? No, because existence by definition is one. There is one existence. There is not multiple existences. There's only one existence. That means that the nature of existence is oneness. That means going against their nature must be choice. Swimming upstream is not something that just happens. You have to do it. You have to choose to do it. But what I'm saying here, this is Leibniz. Leibniz is my boy, and I didn't even know. I'm learning even more this week, though. When he says this, that reasoning by first principles, or I would say, and prior definitions, like this emphasis on definition is so freaking important. It's critical, and that's why I just am such a stickler about it. Like, don't even say consciousness is fundamental. Stop saying that. It's not getting us anywhere because it's not specific. You have to give more specificity. What is consciousness? People don't even know what that means. People say, well, AI might be conscious but not sentient. Do you even know what that means? I've never met anybody that knows what that means, and I've met multiple people that have said it, and they had no idea what it meant. They said, well, we don't know. I'm like, then why are you proposing it? Don't propose something that has no meaning. That's insane. It's like proposing, atoms of space. I'm just kidding. But not. But kind of. Or Higgs. You have no evidence that multiplicity manifests without intentionality. If you do, make a YouTube channel showing that and send it to me and I will watch. Consciousness is the observer effect, nothing more. It's that simple. What is an observer effect? What does that even mean? Consciousness is the observer effect. I don't think that is even defined. And certainly not well if there is like a specific definition that people use. It's not defined well. Like, your words need to reflect in their very structure what the meaning of them is. This is why, when I was talking to people at this conference, and I was like, do you have any questions about my theory? After they read the abstract, and they were like, I think this word singularity is throwing me off. And I've said this before, is that it has thrown other people off too, including members of my family and friends. When I was like, read this summary of my theory, tell me do you understand it? And they were like, no. And I was like, it took me months to realize what was throwing them off. And I realized it was the word singularity. And then I changed the abstract to say, to define what I meant by singularity. And then I gave it back to them. And I was like, read it now. And they read it. And I was like, do you get it? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, can you tell me what it means? And they told me exactly what it means. They were like, the universe is a sentient being and making more sentient beings inside of itself. And that's what's fundamental. I was like, okay, that's exactly right. But they were confused by the term singularity because it's now refers to, the Big Bang or the center of a black hole only. No, it was used to describe those structures because of what it means, which is singular. It comes to a point, to a point of indivisibility. That's what it means. And a single point of indivisibility. When I use singularity, that's what I mean. But somebody at this conference was like, I'm getting hung up on the word singularity again. And it made me almost want to like not use the word because it's been hyper contextualized which in a way that has divorced it from its etymology. And you can't divorce a term from its etymology. It is, the words that we use are the words that we use because of their etymology. You cannot say, oh no, that's a specific physics term. No, it's not. There's no such thing as a specific physics term. There are terms that convey concepts, and we can contextualize them in various contexts. There is no specific physics terms. This is like academic dogma. It's like people who use science words like quantum to sound sciencey. No, quantum, the etymology of quantum is a useful and specific etymology that predates what is any of our quantum mechanical models. Like it's called quantum mechanics because the term existed. Quantum existed, and it's a single unit. That's what it is. And so we need to keep using the terms that are most accurate in conveying the concept that we're trying to convey, even if it throws people off. I literally this weekend was like, do I need to just like change the term singularity and just be like sentient being theory? Because then it's super obvious. But it's like, no, the theory, a metaphysics theory that is fundamental, needs to have a proposal for what is the nature of existence and what is the structure of existence. The nature is sentience. The structure is singularity. You can't just be sentient being theory because it's like saying sentient theory, almost. To some degree. Not exactly. But you could just say being theory, but then doesn't... And that would be accurate, but it's like too vague almost. But I thought about this before. Another term is like theism, sentient singularity theory, theism, monadology, being theory. Like these would all be basically correct. But it just depends on also your goal, on which term you choose. I wanted to give context, and context requires a relationship, and that's why it's two terms instead of one. It's not being theory; it's sentient singularity theory. Those two terms contextualize each other. It's like the words we use are very important, and there is a right answer for which word to use. There is a best word always, and there is no true synonyms. So there is a best word. It's not just I want to use that word. No, consciousness is the wrong word to use. It's not the best word. I'll say that. I don't want to say it's the wrong word, but it's not the best one, and the best one is the only right one. Okay, go outside your front door and watch a car travel down the highway. That's called the observer effect. What does that mean? That you're observing? Why can't I do the observer effect right here by observing? I don't know what you mean. I mean, I'll look up observer effect. Is the phenomenon where the act of observing and measuring a system alters the behavior of that system. That's not what you said, but that's what is the definition that's coming up here. It's the disturbance of an observed system by the act of observation. That is a specific definition. And actually, observer effect makes sense there because an observer is having an effect through the act of observation. That makes perfect sense. That term makes perfect sense, actually, in that context. Everybody on planet watches the sunrise and sunset. Everybody that's in the entire species observing that phenomenon. And you're going to tell me that God did that? No. I'm going to say that God made you. That's what I'll say. I don't think God had any choice in the laws of physics that govern our weather. I think that God made you and had to choose you, that you exist. I don't think you would exist if God didn't choose to make you. The partition of sentience into an additional sentience within his oneness of sentience requires an intentional action because it is against the nature of existence and the definition of existence itself, which is that it is one. I can't see through walls. You can't see through walls. What's up, Addie? I linked to your channel. Addie is in the comments going by Ekkolapto. He's the one that interviewed Wolfram. He's the one that also invited me to the conference, and his channel is linked below. He has great content. You should definitely check it out. He did a great interview. I'm sure that it will eventually be posted somewhere, and when it is, I will share it. But I don't think it's up yet anywhere. Yeah. Again, God made you. That's what I'll say. I'm not gonna get into like, oh, everybody's observing the sunsets and like God didn't do that. I don't know what you're trying to say, but you are here because God wanted to make you, chose to make you, went against his, actually like took action in order to make you. Not, it wasn't something that just would have happened. It's something he had to choose to act. Just like you have to choose to stand up, he has to choose to make you. You don't have to choose to fall down. You can't just fall down. You can't just be made by accident. Like you can fall by accident. But you don't stand up by accident. It's against the nature of your context. My daughter today, she fell into the bathtub. There was no water in it, but she was trying to grab a rubber duck out of the bathtub. And she fell in and she caught herself with her hands and couldn't get herself back out. And so she was just standing there on her hands, basically, with her feet up in the air, and then just started screaming for help. And I walked in and picked her up again. But it's funny because when she first learned to stand, I have a video of it actually. She stood up, and then which was an intentional action. She tried to do it. It didn't just happen naturally, instinctually. She looked at other people standing and she was like, I want to do that. And if I do that, that lets me grab what I want to grab and see what I want to see. And she worked for weeks to learn how to stand up. Really months and months and months. If you consider all the time leading up to standing up, but in terms of specifically trying to stand up, it was definitely weeks, maybe a couple months even. And then she finally did it, and she couldn't figure out how to get back down, and she just started crying. And I have a video of her standing up, and I in the video I say, Juliana, oh my gosh, you're standing up. And then she just looks at me and just starts crying. But it's not because standing up was an accident. It's because she couldn't figure out how to get back down. I'm not made by God. My parents procreated, and I was born in this reality. Where did you come from? I'm not talking about your genetic code or your body. I'm talking about your sentience. Where did that come from? You don't know. It doesn't exist in the physical space. But you know it exists. Because it could not exist. You could be just a body. And you're not feeling anything, not aware of anything, not able to move and maneuver and take action and make choices. And just still, the body that looks like your body could just be laying there. So it clearly, like your soul, we'll call it a soul, your sentient singularity, your someoneness is real. In fact, it's the realest thing that you know. And where did that come from? I don't think that you can answer that with a physical explanation. You can't, because it's not a physical structure. it can't, there's no change in physics between a body that isn't, that is a dead body, and someone who's alive 2 seconds earlier. You can think that there's physical differences. There's not. There's not. There's somewhere where there's something that there's experience that you experience while you're dreaming, and those are real experiences. Like, they are not taking place in the physical space, but you're still there, and you're not acting in the physical space. You're acting in the mental space, in the information space alone, and but you are still there. You are still acting. Like, you make the same choices in your dreams that you would make in reality, for the most part, if faced with the context of your dream, which sometimes is not something that you would experience in the physical space. But if it was, you would probably make the same choice. You're not on autopilot in your dream. You are still just as active. You're just not interacting with others. That's the difference. But you're still there, which, again, all of this is, it's super obvious that sentience is not physical, but is real. And no one can deny that. It's impossible for somebody to deny that. They'd have to deny their own existence, and then how do you do that? You can't. I came from Texas, born into reality. I live in Texas, y'all. I told my wife, I was like, our daughter, I was like, she's gonna say y'all, because we don't say y'all, but we haven't been here. We've only been here a year. Give it another year, we'll start saying y'all. I came from Texas, born into reality. But where did you come from? Your you-ness. You have no answer. You can't answer it. I taught my mind and my cognitive learning to adapt to this reality. I choose a life without religion, so I don't see a need for this to be guiding me. I'm not talking about religion. I'm just saying existence is a sentient being that makes choices, and it's choosing to make other sentient beings inside of itself. And if it didn't make that choice, then none of us would be here. And sentient existence, what I call God, would be alone and meaningless. Why did God make us? Probably primarily meaning, but probably multiple reasons. Probably lonely, probably bored. You know, if you're an eternal being that is self-aware and completely alone, and therefore completely meaningless and unable to end your own existence even if you wanted to, what do? You make other people, other beings to watch and to impact and to help and to grow. Like, that's what you do. Convince that to 8.9 billion people and counting. I don't have to. What's true is true. Think about you have to logic, I don't need to convince 8 billion people. I just need the logic to be coherent. That's it. I don't care about how many people believe in this. That's God's job, is to convince 8 billion people of his existence. And he's done a pretty good job of it, actually, because most people believe in God. But we have tricked ourselves into not believing the primacy of sentience because of the term religion and how we're educated in school. We're taught about God by people that don't believe in God. That is that means that what they teach us about God is wrong. If God exists, it means that what they're teaching us about what God is and who God is wrong. So you shouldn't believe in what you think God is. That's probably not what I think God is. I'm saying existence itself is a self-aware being with feelings and goals, that is just like you are a self-aware being with feelings and goals, and it is making additional sentient beings within itself intentionally. That's all I mean by God, is the being that is sentient existence. You're a cell inside a body of a bigger being. I have a video that's on my channel. It's very old. It actually predates this channel, but it was on my old channel. That was just my Tyler Goldstein channel. And in the beginning of it, I say, imagine you're a red blood cell. And you walk up to this white blood cell and you say, hey, do you believe in humans? And the white blood cell says, no, man, I don't believe in humans. And the red blood cell says, why not? And the white blood cell says, well, have you ever seen a human? And that's the intro to the video. And that is people denying the existence of God, is cells denying the existence of the body. What happens when cells deny the existence of the body? Not good things. But you know, it doesn't matter whether or not the white blood cell or the red blood cell believe in the existence of humans. They're inside a human. That's the reality. And that's what I'm stating. You're a cell inside of a being that's bigger than you. And why is that so crazy? It actually lines up with what we see in our own bodies. Our own existence models that. Is that we are composed of beings within our that an assembly of beings, essentially within us, or there is an assembly of beings within us. Why would that not scale up? And how would you think that like what do you think our cells perceive? They perceive the weather. Like that's what the bodily functions look like to a cell, is what the weather looks like to us. It's just change going on around you. This process is taking place. There's a cyclical cycle to it, but we don't really see sentience in it because it's beyond our perception, at least physically. Emotionally, no, it's not beyond your perception. You can feel God, but you can't see God. But it's not even that. It's that you can't not see God. It's like you're fish looking in the ocean, looking for, water. You can't not see it. But that doesn't mean that you're going to see the ocean. You'll never see the ocean if you live in the ocean. Not as the ocean. It's just your world. You have to be outside the ocean, looking at the ocean to be, oh, that's the ocean. That's a thing that's specific. Otherwise, it's just your world. But yeah, you're a being inside a being, and you are composed of beings that are inside of you. If you're looking around at Texas and you're like, I live in Texas, it's like, you are composed of cells. That's much more relevant than you living in Texas. I used to live in California. Before that, I lived in Arizona. And now I live in Texas. None of it is relevant to me existing, or whether or not God exists. You cannot personify blood cells, really? You don't think you can personify cells? Have you ever looked at a cell under a microscope going about its life? You should look at Michael Levin's work. Cells are very obviously sentient, or they appear to be very obviously sentient. You don't know because I don't even know if you're sentient. You don't even know if I'm sentient. You assume I am. But if you look at a cell and it's moving around, and you look at white blood cells under a microscope, they look like little animals. Why do you assume that you have you're a person, you have personhood, but they don't? What do you do that they don't? You do all the same things that they do. All of them. You can, like, they have personhood. Or at least you should assume they do, because if you assume that they don't, then you shouldn't even assume that other people do, because you shouldn't assume that animals do. And if you don't assume that animals do, then why would you assume humans do even? It just doesn't make sense. It all will break down. And there's so much more that breaks down that I just don't have time to get into. But like, why would you not assume a blood cell is sentient? You know why you don't assume a blood cell is sentient? Because you don't watch a blood cell go through its life. All you do is you've seen a picture, a cartoon picture in a textbook that never changes and never moves. And that's your only exposure to seeing a red blood cell. No, Imagine you looked at a single red blood cell from the moment it was first born to the moment that it dies, and you watched its entire life through a microscope. You think that it would look a lot more animated than it does in that textbook? Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's funny because people, they assume that like animals are not sentient too, or they don't personify animals. Those are the people that don't watch animals go through their lives. Like anybody with a pet knows that pets have personality. Personality is what persons have. Those with personality have personhood. Your cells have personality. It's funny to think about, but it's absolutely true. Does it matter to you? No, but like they do. It matters to each other, to them. They probably have other cells that they like being around, other cells they don't. Like individuals. Why? Why do we? Because individuals, sentient beings, are individuals who are unique and aware of themselves and of others. If you're unique, if everybody is unique and you're unique and everybody else is unique and you're aware of others and you're aware of self and they're aware of you, it's inevitable that you're going to get along with some of these persons and not all of these persons. And it's not just about like, oh, the type of blood cell that you are. It's like also about who's that guy? I don't like him. His personality rubs me the wrong way. That is probably absolutely true of the nature of cells. And it is absolutely true of the nature of animals. And anybody who has had a pet that's not just a beta fish for a month knows that. You know it. But you can't actually know that by watching it, by seeing an animal crossing the road. It doesn't tell you anything. You have to watch it live its life. You can't just look at a cell under a microscope that you, in a blood that you drew out of your body, and then you look at the cell under a microscope. You think that you're going to see normal behavior? Do you think you're going to see that thing living? You took it out of its world. Of course, it's like probably not going to do anything. Imagine if I picked you up off of planet Earth and expelled you into space and then looked at you, tried to learn about like what is the nature of a human by watching it float around in orbit. You can't learn shit from that. Like about humans. You have to watch them here, interacting with each other, going about their lives, being born, dying, pairing up, like, and you see cells do that in the body. You do not see cells do that once they're outside the body, really. Their world is gone. Their context is gone. We need to start thinking about the context of our observations and also recognize like what we have observed and what we haven't. You have never seen a red blood cell ever. And you've definitely never seen one go about its life. Cannot personify. 369. Exactly. My work for all to see and hold under scrutiny. I don't know what you're saying. But make a channel and then post in the comments. I'll share it. It seems like we don't agree on what is most important, I would think, but you know, I'll still share it. I respect anybody putting their ideas out there. All right, guys, I got to call it. Thank you, everybody. Please hit the like button. There's actually a lot of people watching. What time is it? I'm scared even. Oh, maybe I'll keep. There was something that I wanted to talk about, but I can't remember what it was. Actually, maybe I can find this right now. This video of Wolfram. If we're really, really lucky, the engineering of current quantum computers will be good enough of sort of formalizing it. It's an effort that people tried to do a bunch in the 1600s. It happened in mathematics, it happened in physics. Currently fertile field that is still in its infancy. I'm gonna have to find it, but just as our kind of take on computation. But I definitely have it, and I'm gonna post it as a clip. It's kind of like, so, you know, it's like people. I think this is it. We were
we build, obviously, the main sort of tool that gets used for building these kind of computational towers. And for a while,
The part where he's basically like says that the truest thing that we know about and what defines us in our as us as a mind like us, as he says, or an observer like us, is that we have this, we feel that we have this singular string of experience, like in time. What this basically means is like we have a sense of self and we feel that. We don't think it, we feel it, which he used the right word. He used feel. I was very impressed by that. It's a big difference. You don't need to think. You cannot think yourself into having a sense of self. You just feel like self-awareness is this idea that you're just thinking about yourself, thinking like that's just not important at all. And it has nothing to do with being self-aware. Self-aware is awareness of self, having a sense of self. You experience that through your feelings. Any feeling, all feeling. You touch a wall and it's, I don't know, it's rough. You are feeling rough. It's not the wall is rough. You feel roughness. You have an experience of roughness. And that's what rough is a feeling. It's not just an objective structure. Like hot is a feeling. It's not, there's no objectively hot thing. There's no objectively cold. There's no definition of hot and cold without it being a feeling. Same thing with rough and smooth and wet and dry, and like we have these dictionary definitions of these things, these objective definitions that are not complete, because fundamentally these are all feelings, things we feel, and they're not just textures, they are feelings. We really need to like get back at that. All right. My work for all to see. That's basic human psychology. I don't know what is. I'm not afraid of scrutiny by you. Nope. Okay, good. Don't be afraid of scrutiny by me. I don't want anybody to be afraid of scrutiny by me. I'm not afraid of scrutiny by anybody. Stephan Wolfram is I think he's wrong about the fundamental nature of existence. And yet, you know, I want him to look to, I don't want him to look at my work. I wanted to ask him questions and see where we agree and where we didn't. That's what I wanted. I have no desire to push my theory on other people and have them, I invite critique. I don't care about it. Unless somebody really like calls out some logical problem that something that I've stated or assumption that I've made that is illogical and I didn't realize it. I want them to call me out on that, but like, I'm not like, you know, call me out on that at any time, not just my theory. If I say something that's about something that seems unrelated to metaphysics, but it's illogical, tell me in the live chat. You know, if I'm being a hypocrite, tell me in the live chat. All right. I appreciate everybody who watched. This was a long one. I don't even know how long. I'm afraid to look, but I've been trying to keep them to be under 3 hours, and we're under 3 hours. 2 hours and 48 minutes. Please hit the like button if you find this interesting. I'm going to find some clips, those clips of the videos that I took of Stephan Wolfram's interview, and I will talk more about them at some point, and I will also share the full interview when it's put up, probably on the Ekkolapto channel, but that channel is linked below if you want to subscribe, which you definitely should. And I appreciate everybody watching, even everybody who disagrees with me, especially people who disagree with me. If you're curious enough to continue watching and you have thick enough skin to put up with me for an hour or more, or 2 or 3, I respect that. So thank you, everybody. Peace.